Correcting too much. I'm fighting myself out here. Just tell me what you need, Marsh.
Brace for impact.
The flight line at Hargrove Field smelled like jet fuel and cold concrete, and Wren Calder had been standing at the edge of it for exactly 90 seconds before anyone noticed her. She wore a faded flight jacket 2 decades out of regulation. The patches on it scuffed past reading. Her boots were worn soft at the heel. To the security team jogging toward her, she looked like exactly what they expected.
Keep breathing. Stay focused. Talk to me. I'm losing power. The controls are unresponsive. Maintain your attitude. I'm right here.
A civilian who had wandered too close to a restricted perimeter, maybe a tourist, maybe someone's lost grandmother who used to date a pilot. Commander Hobbs reached her first. "Ma'am, this is an active flight line. You need to step back behind the fence line right now." Wren did not step back. She did not argue either. She glanced past his shoulder, toward the gray sky to the northwest, where a single dark shape was descending at an angle that made every controller in the tower lean forward without quite knowing why yet. "Ma'am?" Hobbs's voice sharpened. He turned to his security detail without waiting for her to answer. "Get her off the line. Now." 2 airmen moved in, flanking her. Wren did not resist. She let them take her by the elbow, let them start walking her back toward the gate, and the whole time, her eyes stayed on the sky. Hobbs straightened his jacket and spoke loud enough for the ground crew nearby to hear. "We don't have room out here for nostalgia tours. This is a modern flight operation. She doesn't have a place on this line anymore." A few of the younger airmen smirked. One of the mechanics, older, looked up from the cart he was pushing and frowned, like something about the sentence did not sit right, though he could not have said what. That was when the general frequency cracked open. Every radio on the line, every headset, every speaker bolted to a pole or a hangar wall, carried the same voice at the same time. The tower controller, normally flat and procedural, came through with an edge that silenced the entire ramp. "Wraith Rider, report to tower. Wraith Rider, report to tower immediately." The 2 airmen holding Wren's arms stopped walking. Somewhere behind them, a senior pilot, halfway into his flight suit, went still with one boot off the ground. A maintenance chief dropped a clipboard. Commander Hobbs turned around, already starting to ask who Wraith Rider was, and stopped himself, because something in the way the whole ramp had frozen told him he was the only one on the line who did not already know. Nobody moved for a full 3 seconds. Then the senior pilot, Captain Doyle, 31 years in and not easily impressed by anything, broke into a slow walk toward the tower stairs, like a man who needed to confirm something with his own eyes before he believed it. Commander Hobbs recovered first, the way men used to giving orders always recover first. "Stand down," he barked at his security detail. "Nobody goes anywhere until I find out what that call sign means." But the airmen holding Wren's arms had already let go. They stood there, hands at their sides, looking at her jacket instead of her face now, as if the faded patches might suddenly resolve into something legible. Hobbs stepped in front of Wren, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath, cold and burnt. "You want to explain why the tower just called your name on a frequency that hasn't been used for a real-time emergency in 11 months? Wren's eyes did not leave the sky. The dark shape to the northwest had grown larger and wrong. Its wings were not level. It was drifting sideways in a way that had nothing to do with wind and everything to do with damage, because there's an aircraft up there that doesn't have much runway left to figure things out," she said. Her voice was quiet even, the kind of calm that did not come from training alone. "And your tower just realized they don't have anyone else who's talked a damaged bird through a crosswind landing without a working glide slope." Hobbs's jaw tightened. "We have certified controllers for that." "I'm sure you do." Wren finally looked at him, and there was no triumph in her face, only a flat kind of patience that was somehow worse for him than anger would have been. "Ask them how many of those certifications were earned in combat." A radio on Hobbs's own belt crackled, the tower controller's voice tight and fast now, reading off numbers that made 2 nearby airmen flinch. Fuel state, wind correction angle, a pilot's voice underneath it, all that had started to sound less like a professional and more like a man running out of options. Hobbs looked at the sky, looked back at Wren. For the first time since she had stepped onto his flight line, he did not have an order ready. The radio traffic kept bleeding through, faster now, and Captain Doyle reached the bottom of the tower stairs just as the controller's voice clipped through another transmission. Sandstorm 5-1, say fuel state. The reply came back ragged, half swallowed by static. Sandstorm 5-1, bingo +4. Repeat, bingo +4. We've got a hydraulic failure on the left main, and I am not liking what the stick is telling me. A young airman near Wren went pale. Fuel that low, a hydraulic failure that bad, and a crosswind already shoving the aircraft sideways meant there was exactly one approach coming, and no second chance behind it. Wren reached up, slow, and pulled the zipper on her jacket down an inch, just enough that the patch beneath the collar caught the gray afternoon light. It was worn nearly smooth, the stitching frayed at the edges, but the shape of it was still readable if you had ever seen one before. A pale skull wrapped in static lines, wings swept back like it was already falling and daring you to catch it. The old mechanic who had dropped his clipboard earlier took 2 steps closer, squinting, and then went very still. "That's a rescue wing patch," he said, mostly to himself. "That's a real one. Nobody's worn one of those since—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Hobbs followed his gaze to the patch, and something in his face shifted from irritation toward a slower, colder kind of understanding. The kind that arrives right before a man realizes he has made a mistake in front of an audience that will remember it. You already feel where this is going, don't you? Tell me in the comments the exact moment you'd have stopped doubting her, because the woman standing on that flight line had not said a single word that wasn't already true. The tower controller's voice cracked through the radios one more time, sharper, almost desperate now. "Wraith Rider, we need you up here. We are losing this approach." Wren did not run for the stairs. She walked fast but level, the way someone moves when panic has never once helped them get anywhere. Captain Doyle caught up to her at the base of the tower, and for a second, he just looked at her, recalculating 2 decades of assumptions in real time. "Wren called her," he said, like the name itself was a piece of evidence. "I read your file in flight school. They told us you were a ghost story. Said the rescue wings scrubbed half your record before they archived it. Most of it should have stayed archived," Wren said, already moving past him up the steps. "Right now I need a headset and your controller's seat, not a conversation about my file." Hobbs followed them both, jaw tight, torn between asserting command and the growing, uncomfortable awareness that he no longer understood the situation well enough to control it. "Calder, if you are about to put your hands on a live emergency frequency, I want to know exactly what gives you the authority to—" "You don't have time for that argument, Commander." Wren did not slow down, and neither does the man flying that aircraft. Inside the tower, the controller, a young staff sergeant named Reyes, barely 2 years on the job, looked up with the specific relief of someone who has just realized they are no longer carrying a weight alone. She had heard the stories. She had not expected to ever test whether they were true. "Ma'am, hydraulic failure, left main gear indicating unsafe, crosswind gusting to 31 knots, pilots getting behind the aircraft fast." Reyes's hands were not quite steady on the console. "I don't have a clean glide slope to give him." Wren slid into the seat beside her and pulled the headset on like it had never left her ears. "You're not going to give him a glide slope," she said. "You're going to give him a voice he trusts isn't panicking. That's the only instrument that matters right now." Behind them, in the doorway, Hobbs stood with his arms crossed, no longer giving orders, only watching, while the rest of the ramp crew gathered below the tower windows, drawn by a frequency none of them had been told to listen to, but every one of them suddenly needed to hear. The aircraft on approach was Sandstorm 5-1, an F-16 with a pilot named Lieutenant Cassidy Marsh, 11 months out of training and now flying a jet that no longer agreed with most of her instincts. Wren kept her voice low and unhurried over the radio, the kind of tone that did not match the chaos it was answering. "Sandstorm 5-1, this is Wraith Rider. I've got eyes on you. You're carrying a left wing low drift, and the wind is going to keep pushing you that direction. So don't fight it with a stick. Fight it with power. Static. Then a voice that sounded close to breaking. Wraith, copy. I don't have a good feel on the left main. I don't know if it's going to hold when It doesn't matter what it's going to do yet, Ren said. It matters what you do in the next 40 seconds. Bring your nose up 2 degrees. Just 2. You're overcorrecting. In the tower, Reyes watched the radar return drift, almost imperceptibly, back toward the center line. Hobbs watched too, his arms still crossed, his expression unreadable in a way that suggested several things were happening behind it at once. I have spent most of my life listening to rooms decide who deserves to be believed, and I have learned that the decision usually happens faster than people want to admit. It happened on that ramp in under a minute. It just took the room longer to catch up to what its own ears already knew. Below, on the ramp, the ground crew had stopped pretending to work. Mechanics, fuel techs, 2 pilots still half-suited. All of them stood with their eyes on the sky and their ears on a frequency that, an hour earlier, none of them would have recognized as anything but static. Sandstorm 5-1 leveled, barely, the jet's silhouette steadying against the gray horizon. And for the first time since the Mayday call had gone out, Marsh's voice came back through the radio, sounding like she might actually survive this. Copy, Wraith Rider. Nose up too. I feel that. I feel that. The relief did not last. A gust hit the jet broadside, hard enough that even the ground crew could see it. The silhouette twitching sideways, the nose dipping a fraction too far before Marsh caught it. Wraith Rider. I'm losing the left main indicator completely. I don't know if I've got a gear or memory of one. Marsh's voice cracked on the last word. Ren did not raise her voice. If anything, it dropped lower, steadier, the exact opposite of what panic asks for. Listen to me. You are not landing this airplane on a gear indicator. You are landing it on attitude and airspeed, because those don't lie to you the way a damaged sensor will. Hold 140 knots. Do not chase the number down. Hold it. In the tower doorway, Hobbs uncrossed his arms for the first time since the call sign had gone out over the radio. He stepped closer to the window, watching the aircraft's silhouette the way a man watches something he is finally afraid he might lose. She's burning fuel faster than the model accounts for, Reyes said quietly, eyes on her own display. If this approach doesn't work, it's going to work, Ren said. Not to Reyes. Not even really to Hobbs, but to the frequency itself, to the pilot on the other end of it, who needed to hear certainty more than she needed to hear math. Sandstorm 5-1, you are going to fly this exact picture all the way to the runway. Wings level, nose steady, power matched to the gust. I am not going to let this conversation end any other way. If you've ever watched someone refuse to let a bad outcome happen just by the sheer weight of their voice, you already know what that kind of certainty costs the person carrying it. And you know this channel only gets to keep telling stories like hers if people like you decide it's worth backing. If that's you, the pinned comment is where that decision turns into something real. Below on the ramp, nobody was pretending to work anymore. Every face on that flight line was turned up toward a runway that was about to settle one question for good. The jet dropped through 400 feet, and the crosswind hit it again, harder this time, shoving the nose a few degrees off the center line. Marsh's voice came back tight, almost a whisper. Correcting too much. I can feel it. I'm fighting myself out here. You're not fighting yourself, Ren said. You're fighting the wrong instinct. Your hands want to chase the drift. Don't let them. Small inputs. You're flying a damaged airplane, not arguing with one. In the tower, Reyes's hand hovered near the crash phone. Ready, every line on her console telling a version of the same story. Low fuel, unreliable gear indication. A crosswind that refused to ease off even for 30 seconds. Hobbs stood rigid at the window now, all command posture gone. Just a man watching a runway and doing the math his own way. Altitude, distance, the math that did not require a headset to understand. The jet steadied, barely, nose easing back toward the center line, and for 3 full seconds, it looked almost survivable. Then the gear warning light on Marsh's panel blinked from amber to red. "Wraith Rider, I've got a red light on the left main. I do not think I have a gear." The words landed on the ramp like a physical weight. The old mechanic who had recognized the patch earlier took an involuntary step forward, as if proximity might somehow help. Doyle, standing near the tower stairs, went very still. Wren did not flinch in her seat, but something in her posture sharpened, the calm narrowing into something closer to focus than patience now. "Copy red light," she said. "That changes the plan, not the outcome. Marsh, listen to me carefully, because I am only going to walk you through this once. You are going to bring her in for a gear-up landing on the foam strip," Wren said, each word placed like a tool set down in exactly the right order. "Belly first, wings level, nose slightly up on contact. You are not going to try to save that gear. You are going to save yourself and the airframe, in that order, and you are going to let the runway absorb the rest." Reyes was already keying the crash phone, calling the foam trucks into position, her voice clipped and fast, but no longer frightened. She had something to do now, a procedure to run, and procedure was easier to hold on to than helplessness. "Foam strips being laid," Reyes said. "Trucks moving." "Copy," Wren said, then back on the frequency. "Sandstorm 5-1, you are cleared for a gear-up landing, foam strip active. I want 135 knots over the threshold, not a knot faster. You flare late, not early. Late and shallow." "Late and shallow," Marsh repeated, and there was something different in her voice now. Not fear gone, but fear with somewhere to go. On the ramp, the ground crew had organized themselves without anyone ordering it. Fire trucks rolling into position, medics moving toward the runway's edge, the whole base reorganizing itself around a voice that, 90 minutes earlier, most of them had never heard. Hobbs turned from the window and looked at Wren's profile, at the worn jacket, at the patch still visible beneath her collar, and something in his expression had stopped being about authority entirely. "How many times have you talked someone through this exact thing?" he asked, quiet enough that it almost was not a question for her at all. Wren did not look away from the runway. "Enough times that I stopped counting the ones that worked and started only remembering the ones that didn't." The jet dropped below 200 feet, wings level, nose climbing that final, deliberate 2 degrees, and the entire flight line went silent in the particular way a place goes silent when it finally understands what it is about to witness. I will say this plainly, because it deserves to be said plainly. Nobody on that ramp was thinking about rank anymore. Not Hobbs, not Doyle, not the airman who had been ordered to walk her off the line less than 10 minutes earlier. There is a version of respect that only arrives when fear strips away everything decorative, and that is the only version that ever really counts. The jet crossed the threshold at 134 knots, low and flat, exactly the picture Wren had described. "Power idle," she said. "Nose up. Let her settle." Marsh's voice came back almost steady. "Power idle. Nose up." The aircraft's belly met the foam-slicked runway in a long, grinding shriek of metal and white spray. Sparks skating sideways under the fuselage, the whole airframe shuddering as it scraped along the strip exactly the way it was supposed to. Violent, loud, and survivable. On the ramp, nobody breathed. Nobody. The jet slid, decelerating, the nose staying up, the wings staying level, exactly as instructed, until the friction and the foam and 4,000 feet of runway did the rest of the work a healthy landing gear would have done. It stopped with almost 200 feet of runway still in front of it. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the canopy popped, and Lieutenant Marsh's gloved hand rose into the air, shaking but unmistakably alive, and the entire ramp erupted, not in noise yet, but in the kind of full-body exhale that happens before the noise. In the tower, Reyes sat back from her console, hands trembling now that there was finally room for them too. Hobbs did not move at all. He stood at the window with his arms loose at his sides, watching crash trucks converge on an aircraft that, 90 seconds earlier, he had not believed would land in one piece, saved by a woman he had personally ordered off his flight line. The noise came a beat later, the way it always does after something that close, Fire crews swarmed the jet, foam still settling around the fuselage in slow white drifts, and Marsh was already being helped down from the cockpit. Legs unsteady, one hand pressed flat against the side of the aircraft, like she needed to confirm it was real. In the tower, Wren pulled the headset off slowly, set it down with the same unhurried care she had used to put it on, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in 10 minutes. Reyes looked at her, still catching her breath. That's the calmest I have ever heard anyone sound while someone else's life was on the line. It's not calm, Wren said. It's just quieter than the panic. Panic is loud because it wants you to notice it. Competence doesn't need you to notice anything. Downstairs, the ramp had gone from frozen silence to something closer to disbelief. Mechanics who had not said a word in 10 minutes were talking over each other now. Doyle stood near the base of the tower stairs, arms crossed, shaking his head slowly, the particular gesture of a man revising a story he thought he already knew the ending to. Hobbs walked out onto the tower catwalk alone. He looked down at the runway, at the foam, at the jet sitting intact instead of scattered across 4,000 feet of concrete. And then he looked back through the glass at the woman who, less than 20 minutes earlier, he had ordered removed from his flight line for not belonging on it. He did not say anything yet. He did not have the words ready, and for a man used to always having the words ready, that absence was its own kind of confession. Below, the crowd that had gathered along the flight line began to look up at the tower instead of at the runway, because everyone on that ramp had reached the same conclusion at roughly the same time. The story they were about to be told about today was not going to be the one Hobbs had started it with. Hobbs came down the tower stairs slower than he had gone up them. By the time he reached the bottom, the ramp had gone quiet again, but it was a different quiet than before. Not the frozen silence of confusion, but the held breath silence of an audience waiting to see if the man in charge would say what everyone already knew. Wren walked out a few steps behind him, jacket zipped back up, the patch hidden again beneath the collar, as though she had no particular interest in being looked at any longer than necessary. Hobbs stopped in front of her. The coffee and irritation expression from 20 minutes earlier was gone completely, replaced by something more careful, the look of a man recalculating exactly how much of what he had said out loud was about to become a permanent part of the story. Ms. Calder, his voice was lower than before, stripped of the command edge. I owe you. He stopped, started again. I gave an order to have you removed from an active flight line 10 minutes before you saved that aircraft and the pilot in it. You did, Wren said. There was no satisfaction in it, no edge either. Just fact, delivered flat. I wanted on record that I was wrong. Around them, nobody pretended not to be listening. Doyle had stopped pretending entirely. The mechanic who had recognized the patch stood with his arms crossed, watching the exchange like a man witnessing something he intended to repeat for years. If this is the moment you've been waiting for since the first order to remove her, this channel only keeps building stories that pay off this hard because people decide it's worth keeping alive. So if this one earned that from you, the pinned comment is where you can make that real. Wren glanced once at the runway, where Marsh was being walked toward a waiting ambulance, alive and upright, and arguing with the medic, trying to make her sit down. Put it on record that the pilot flew it well, she said. That's the part of the record that actually matters. Hobbs did not let it drop that easily. He turned, raising his voice just enough to carry across the ramp, the way a man does when he has decided that an apology spoken only to one person is not enough to undo what was said in front of an audience. Everyone on this ramp heard what I said to this woman 20 minutes ago, he said. I said she didn't have a place in a modern flight operation. I was wrong, and I want every person here to understand exactly how wrong, because what just happened on that runway does not get explained away by rank or by how long it's been since her name was on an active roster. A few of the younger airmen who had smirked earlier now looked at the ground, the particular discomfort of people remembering their own small contribution to an embarrassment. Doyle stepped forward, addressing the group as much as Hobbs. For what it's worth, sir, some of us already knew who she was the second the tower said her call sign. We just didn't say anything. because it wasn't ours to say. Then somebody should have said it sooner, Hobbs said, not unkindly, just tired in a way that sounded almost honest. The old mechanic spoke up from the back of the small crowd, his voice rough. Wraith Rider pulled 6 men out of a downed transport in conditions worse than this, years before half the people standing here ever put on a uniform. We don't talk about it because most of that file got buried. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Wren did not confirm or deny it. She did not need to. The silence that followed did the confirming for her, settling over the ramp the way silence does when a rumor finally meets a fact and stops being a rumor. Hobbs looked at her one more time, and this time there was no command left in his posture at all. Only the plain, unguarded look of a man giving credit because it was owed, not because anyone was making him. By the time the sun started dropping toward the western ridgeline, the foam had been hosed off the runway and the jet had been towed clear, but nobody on the ramp had quite gone back to acting normal. Lieutenant Marsh, released from the medic's tent with nothing worse than a sprained wrist and a story she would be telling for the rest of her career, found Wren near the hangar before she could slip away. "I don't know what to say to you," Marsh said. "Other than that, I'm alive, and I don't think I would be if the tower had called anyone else." "You flew it," Wren said. "I just talked. The hands on the stick were yours the whole time." Marsh shook her head, not arguing exactly, just unwilling to let the moment shrink down that small. That's not how it felt from up there. Reyes came down from the tower a few minutes later, her shift technically over, but clearly unwilling to leave before she had said something. "Ma'am, for what it's worth, I've sat that console through 4 real emergencies in 2 years. That was the first one where I wasn't scared the whole way through. I was scared. I just wasn't scared alone. I have very little patience for people who confuse quiet with weakness, and I have spent a long time watching rooms make that exact mistake right up until the moment it costs them something. What changed on that ramp today wasn't loud. It rarely is. It just stopped being deniable. Word had already started moving through the base the way it does on every base in the world, not through official channels, but through ground crews and mess hall lines, and the particular gossip network that exists between people who work 12-hour shifts together. By evening, half the squadron would know the story. By the next morning, most of them would know it correctly. Hobbs, for his part, had not gone back to his office. He stood near the hangar doors, watching the last of the daylight catch the wing of the parked, scarred F-16. And for a man who built his entire authority on certainty, the size of how wrong he had been was clearly still settling in. The official report, when it was finally filed 3 days later, used careful language: gear malfunction, emergency landing, contributing factor, civilian advisory from former air rescue personnel. It did not use the words ordered to leave or wrong about her or any of the other phrases that had actually been said out loud on that ramp. Wren read it once, standing in the base operations office with a cup of coffee she had not asked for, and Hobbs hovering nearby with the particular awkwardness of a man who did not know whether silence or conversation was the safer option. "It doesn't mention what I said to you," Hobbs said finally, "when I had you walked off the line." "It doesn't need to," Wren said. "I'm not interested in being written into your paperwork as a lesson. I'm interested in whether your tower has someone now who can talk a damaged aircraft down if I'm not standing on your ramp the next time it happens." Hobbs was quiet for a moment. Reyes asked about training, said she wants to learn how you read an approach like that. Then let her ask. That's worth more than an apology in a file nobody outside this building will ever open. Outside the window, the flight line had gone back to its ordinary rhythm. Jets being fueled, checklists being run, the daily noise of a base that had, only 3 days earlier, gone completely silent for the first time most of the people on it could remember. Doyle found Wren by the gate as she was leaving, her jacket zipped, the patch hidden again, the worn boots carrying her toward a truck that looked like it belonged to someone with nowhere urgent to be. "You going to stick around?" he asked. "Not my base," Wren said. "Wasn't planning to. Might want to reconsider that," Doyle said. "I think this one just figured out it needs you more than it knew." Wren did not answer Doyle right away. She set one hand on the truck door and looked back across the flight line one more time. At the scarred F-16, still parked near the hangar, at the foam stains not yet fully washed from the concrete, at Hobbs standing in the operations doorway, watching her leave without trying to stop her. "Maybe," she said. "Maybe not. Either way, you'll know if you need me. The frequency works both directions." She climbed into the truck, and for a moment the entire ramp seemed to pause again, the way it had when the tower first called her name. Not from emergency this time, just from the simple, settling realization that something rare had passed through and might not stay. The engine started. The truck pulled away from the gate, past the fence line where, less than 4 hours earlier, 2 airmen had walked her off this exact stretch of concrete because a commander had decided she didn't belong on it. Hobbs watched until the truck turned onto the access road and disappeared past the tree line. And then he turned back toward the tower, where Reyes was already pulling up training records, already trying to find out how a person learned to sound that certain when everything else in the world was falling apart. He did not write Ren Calder's name into any official correction. He did not need to. Every person who had stood on that ramp would carry the correction themselves, the way a base always does. Not in the paperwork, but in the version of the story that gets told at the bar, in the mess hall, to the next recruit who shows up cocky enough to think rank is the only thing in a uniform that earns respect. Somewhere over the western ridge, the sky had gone the deep orange of a day finally letting go, and the only sound left on the flight line was the wind moving across concrete that, for one afternoon, had remembered exactly what it looked like when competence finally stopped asking permission.